Hey everybody, Mungo Dark Matter here, and today I thought I'd do a review of Stradivari Violin by Native Instruments, which is a virtual sampled instrument by Native Instruments for Kontakt. This is totally sampled from an actual Stradivarius violin. It was sampled in a special room that they have for it and other antique instruments, which is kind of acoustically designed to get the optimal recording from the instrument. And they spent a lot of time on this. They used 32 microphones for this throughout the room. And they went through a process of getting every type of style of bowing and plucking the instrument, as well as getting every actual note. So none of the notes are synthesized or altered at all. They're the actual notes. They're pure from the violin itself. So that takes a lot of work, and it takes a lot of samples to do that. And each one of those samples has been recorded on 32 separate microphones, which they've used to create this plugin. Now, there are two versions of this plugin that you get, or this instrument that you get. One of them's the multi-microphone one, which you can adjust what the violin sounds like, whether it's in a bigger room or a smaller room. And it does this by using the recordings from all of the different 32 microphones. But there's another version of it, which I'm demonstrating here, which is just kind of the smaller version. And they did that because the larger version takes up so much memory that if you're not using the extra benefits of that, or you don't need that, you can save some memory in your machine, particularly if you don't have a lot of memory in your machine to use in the first place. So this version that we're using here, which is a smaller version, is 1.2 gigabytes. The larger version is 3.6 gigabytes, 3 times the size. Now, just to give you a frame of reference, the different instrument files or samples for an instrument used in Kontakt range anywhere from 25 megabytes to 250 or 200 megabytes for the entire instrument of memory that it's using, which is showed up at the top right here. And so the smaller of the libraries is about 5 times the size of a larger one, and it's like it's like 50 times the size of many instruments that are only 20 megabytes. So that's a lot just for the small one, and then the big one's 3 times that. So the great thing is it gives you a lot of detail, and it gives you the ability to play different styles of bowing and such, and the instrument sounds just beautiful. So we'll start off right here with this preset, which is the Virtuoso, which kind of combines a lot of the different samples in it. And the Virtuoso tries to by looking at what notes you are playing and such, in the way you're playing and how long you're holding it, it tries to figure out the best sample to use for it. But you can use specific things, which I'll show you in a second, or specific styles of bowing if you want a particular thing. Like if you want it pizzicato, you can make it pizzicato, which is just plucking. So just to give you an idea of what it sounds like. So that's basically what it sounds like using Virtuoso. So it's kind of a good kind of a basic setting to use for a lot of different things you might be using, but you might want to do specific things. So if you want it plucked or pizzicato, you can set it to that. If you want it staccato, you can use that as well, which is very short bow. Detach a bowed is where it's kind of the opposite of legato, where the notes are kind of specifically drawn out. Now you see these four things down at the bottom here, these that say none. You can select any of these and go to the three dots, and you can select other types of bowing and sounds, like long sustained notes if you want. If you want to use crescendo, you can use that as well. Crescendo will start low and get louder. You can do a trill. Or tremolo. And you can do this, which is ricochet. That's where the bow is kind of bouncing off the string. These are all Italian words that are used in the music to specify how the violinist is supposed to play. Oh, there's also harmonics in here. And so we'll go back to virtuoso. So those are some of the different voicings and bowings you can use, or bowing, however you say it, bow. The ways you can bow it. So if we go down here, you'll see here there's position. If I hit a key, a little dot will appear here, and it kind of shows you what string it's going to be on and what position on the string. So if we go here and click on these three dots again, we can bring this up, and by default it's on smart positioning. So what that does is, depending on what notes you are playing and what sequence of notes you are playing, it tries to play it as the violinist would standardly play it. So whatever string they may play them on. But except for the lowest notes, many of the notes on a violin and other stringed instruments, you can play them on multiple different strings once you get up to higher notes. And so what happens is, with this positioning, you can tell it to either use the smart positioning, or you can tell it to weight it towards a high string or a low string. And there's kind of a difference in the way it sounds, which may or may not make that much difference to you. But if it does, it's in here, and that's one of the reasons the samplings are so large in this, because they even goes into, well, they've sampled every absolute note on the violin. None of them have been kind of like, you can create a sample instrument out of one sample, and the computer will kind of adjust the tone, or you can have more or less samples depending on how detailed you want a sample instrument. This has all of the notes on the violin in here, and then it has an algorithm that will play the different notes on different strings. So it doesn't just have the note once on whatever string they happen to pick and just do a scale. They did scale all the way up each string. So some of the notes are repeated, so you have the same note on different strings in this sample library. So that's how detailed it is. So one of the other things to bear in mind on this is, if you see up here when we select any one of these things, like Virtuoso C1 over here where I added harmonics, this would be nothing by default, but we added harmonics to it, is C2. So it goes from C1 to C2, there's D1, E1, and so on. So when you hit those notes, it will switch. So if, like, for instance, I hit a note right here, it goes to staccato. So if I hit that on my keyboard, it will do the same thing. If I go back to this, it will go back to virtuoso. The cool thing about that is that means as you're playing, and remember, you can put these presets to whatever you want. You can switch. So if you wanted to switch to pizzicato, you could hit F1, and it would take you to pizzicato. And if you wanted to go back to virtuoso, you'd go to C1. And if you had particular styles of bowing or whatever that you wanted in a piece, you could put them down on these four right here, so you could set them to whatever you wanted. Now, the drawback to this is that if, that's where the lowest key is, right here. Now, these other three keys right here that are blue, green, and white are change bow, force open strings, bow change. So those are other things as well that are mapped to those. So if you miss and go below this and like hit one of these other keys, it will affect what's there. So like, for instance, when I'm playing this and I go too low and I hit down here, it goes to pizzicato, and now it's plucking. So that's just something to be aware of, because at first it kind of confused me because I wasn't aware those key controls were down there, and I was just noodling around, as they say on the keyboard, and I went a little bit too far, and I was just playing to see, what keys were active and such, not thinking about that some of these are control keys, and so it would knock out the sound sometimes when I hit another key, or it would change the sound of it, and I didn't know what was going on, and that's what was going on. So that's a great feature to have if you know to use it, and you need to know about it even if you don't use it, just so that you don't accidentally hit one of those keys and wonder what's happened to your setting, why the setting changed, or why it's gone blank. In fact, if we hit one of these, there's one of these that I hit. Oh, if you hit one that's none and you haven't said anything, it sets it to none, so there's no sound, and that's what was happening with me. So just something to be aware of there on that. So that's pretty much the overview of this whole thing. I really like this. I think some of the advantages are some of the drawbacks to it. It's such a large library or such a large sample for the instrument. It takes up a lot of memory. And so if you don't need the multi-mic function, I wouldn't load the whole thing up into memory. I'd use the smaller one. It also kind of depends on how many instruments you're using, if you're using a full symphony behind it, and other things when you're using it, depending on what type of music you want to use this on, or what pieces or works that you use it on. You have to remember that it's going to be taking up pretty much the space of 5 larger instruments or 50 smaller ones or something. So very large library. That's a drawback to it, but it's also what makes it really, really nice in really capture the sound of the Stradivarius. This is obviously geared towards orchestral music, but you can use it for whatever you'd want to use a violin for, although I'm not sure the styles here. There may be some styles of bowing on other virtual violins that might be better for certain types of music, that might be geared towards using the violin for country or jazz or whatever that's being played. So that's another thing to consider. But anyway, it's a beautiful instrument, and if you're looking for a Stradivarius violin or just a very good violin, sample instrument, this is really a good one to go with, and they really put a lot of effort into it. And it's just amazing to play with, because this is really one of the best done sample libraries I've seen, in one of the largest as far as for an instrument. Just all of those samples in there to make this such a flexible instrument, and to capture it as perfectly and authentically as possible. I'm Mungo Dark Matter, and this has been The Dark Matters, and whatever you do, enjoy the day, enjoy some music, and I will see you soon. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.